Folks. My name is Hector Jimenez. I think I see a few familiar faces out there. I've spoken to some of you guys in the past before, but if we haven't, like I said, my name is Hector Jimenez, and I'm over the technical support team here at AI. Many of you guys have probably spoken to some of my team members throughout your time using our products and services. So it's a pleasure to be here and really talk about, some of the top inquiries that we get from our side and how you can avoid them, as well as best practices and, some of the symptoms that you might encounter. This is really a curated list based off of situations that we've seen on our day-to-day interactions with our customers, and really identifying, where are the places that our customers could avoid these pitfalls on their own prior to even having to reach out to us. So we'll go ahead and get started. A very common one is, getting situations where your RMU is not communicating. Some of the symptoms you might encounter throughout that is, missed schedule communication, where you might have had something scheduled for tomorrow or today that just didn't come through for some reason. A read on demand was not transmitting. Maybe you're trying to test your unit, see, hey, is it operational? And you see that read on demand failed for you, as well as just general commands such as interruption commands not acknowledging. I'm sure some of you guys might have encountered one of these issues at some point. You might run into it throughout the installation process. It's actually very common, but these are some of the symptoms that you can really expect when you're getting non-communication issues. I'll kind of go into best practices coming up, but have any of you guys had issues where your RMU just stopped communicating and you kind of were wondering, what was going on in that case? Curious to see how many hands would actually raise up there. Okay.
Yeah, and feel free to chime in with questions that you have as we go along.
Please do. So our first best practice is, and let me actually move my window here, is ensuring that the unit has power. And that sounds kind of obvious, but really the unit can't, we kind of get into this habit of, oh, my unit's always on and it's always working. And, it's one of those things where you think about some of your household items and the last thing you think about is checking the cord itself. And this is really one of those situations where, just make sure that it does actually have power. And sometimes it does require a field visit, as well as checking the battery for the appropriate voltages. The unit might have power, but it might not be receiving enough power. There is minimum voltage requirements for the batteries that come in some of those units, specifically for the 4014 and 4150, it's 12 volts. The RM5 series, the dome itself does have a 4-volt requirement. And then the power supply, the relay itself that is getting power to the RMU for the RM5 series is 13 volts at a minimum. So you want to make sure that your technicians are actually checking that as well. Not just checking for power, but again, ensuring that adequate amount of power is being relayed to those units. Our next best practice is, physical factors, obstructions to the dome, the cell and sat dome, wiring damage from the elements, or physical damage to the unit. You might find a rat's nest in your unit, especially if it's out in the field that's prone to, animals being around. We've even had situations where there was bullet holes in a unit at once. Some folks thought it would be funny to use it as target practice. You don't really factor those in, especially when you're monitoring remotely, which is, the big benefit of having remote monitors, but, something that you have to really see in person. We really do highly encourage you guys to go through all your wires with a fine comb, just to ensure that there isn't any issues with damage itself. It might even be at the base of a certain wire where it's hard to see if you're just spot checking it. But very often we'll hear that, hey, a rat got into our enclosure here, or there's ants, there's like an anthill or a colony of wasps or bees that are kind of inhabiting our RMU, and it's not an uncommon situation that we ran into. So just make sure that you guys are also instructing your technicians, or you yourselves are checking those out and ensuring that there is no physical factors that are really causing that issue as a whole. The next best practice is we have what's called our Bullhorn Tools application, and it's really our diagnosis and upgrade application for our RMUs. Some of the capabilities that it has is the ability to check the signal strength of the unit, reset the unit, and then check for updates as well. You might be in a situation like in an environment where your unit technically does have communication, but it might have very poor signal quality, which could hamper its reliability to communicate in regular intervals. Similar to your cell phone, you might. I mean, I'm sure we've all been in situations where we had a bar or two, but we were still kind of scratching our heads as to why my message was not going through. And then ultimately it fails. These units are subject to still, cellular and satellite providers. And while, it might be adequate to have a low signal, and it could be good enough to communicate, it could cause obstructions in terms of its ability to effectively communicate. So, as an additional step, just make sure that your technicians are leveraging the Bullhorn Tools application to check the signal quality, but also, kind of run through the general troubleshooting, like reset the unit. If you're noticing that this unit is for some reason just having issues sending commands out, a best practice is just to do a reset and see if maybe there's a startup process that needs to initiate again to get it up and running appropriately. One of the common IT issues, and I think we've all worked with an IT member within our organization one time or another, but one of the main things that they always tell us is, did you reset your computer? And that does kind of function, that same troubleshooting does function the same for a lot of other technologies, including these RMUs. Lastly, firmware updates. To talk on that a little bit, we release firmware updates to our units to really make major improvements to it, both on its ability to communicate, but also its ability to run more efficiently. Some of the improvements can be as far as having like auto recovery processes when there's maybe some sort of failure on the back end of the system. Maybe like battery preservation processes that kind of run with the firmware updates. If your unit is due for a firmware update, our Bullhorn Tools application will prompt you to do that firmware update. So we do highly encourage you guys to do that firmware update, as it will keep you up to date with our most recent versions of what the device should be running on. We're making improvements throughout, not just to make it to add additional features, but really to make it more reliable as well. So check for firmware updates, and obviously if you ever need any help with that, you're more than welcome to contact our support team, my team members, and we could definitely assist you with those. So was there any questions in the chat, by the way? This is our last slide for RMU not communicating.
Yeah, Mike Plaster mentioned that he had a call last week that took over 40 minutes to resolve. If the tech had Bullhorn Tools, it would have been a 5-minute call.
Cool.
I'd take 5 minutes over 40 minutes. How about you guys?
Yeah. Bullhorn Tools is extremely beneficial, guys, for diagnosis. We highly, highly encourage your technicians to have Bullhorn Tools installed on their phone. And just like the firmware, ensure that it's up to date, because with new updates to firmware, Bullhorn Tools does come new functionality for you to be able to diagnose your RMUs. It's similar to a mechanic having their OBD2 scanner. I don't know how many people work on a car. My dad was a mechanic, and he would need that for basically every type of repair job that he would do. So we do encourage you guys to have that. In fact, if often we will ask, hey, can you install Bullhorn Tools if we get a call about someone being at the RMU, because it's just leverages our ability to help out a customer that much more having that. So
Hector, how can people actually communicate with and leverage Bullhorn Tools? How can they access that?
yeah, so Bullhorn Tools, you can download it through the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. And once you have Bullhorn Tools installed, it'll prompt you to allow it to have Bluetooth access. For our RM5 units, you essentially just have to mag swipe. So essentially have a magnet and swipe that magnet over the IO on the RM5. It will then go into pairing mode. And if you have Bullhorn Tools open, you should actually be able to see that RM5 available to connect within Bullhorn Tools. And it's that simple. It's just as simple as swiping the IO with the magnet, pulling up the application, and then connecting to the unit. And right off the bat, and I wish you can kind of see actually in the picture right here, you'll see information about your unit, the firmware version that it's on, its signal quality, as well as some of the voltages and readings that it's collecting. So, and that's all information you're getting directly from the unit. So you're not needing to, well, it's more reliable in sense because you're right in front of it and you're not needing to rely on a communication being sent out to a Bullhorn web. You can actually get that information from the source. All right. Our next common issue that we get calls about is DVM not connecting to your device. Some of the symptoms that you guys might see is your DVM does not display the connection option in PCS field data collector, and your Bluetooth is not finding your DVM. First best practice for that is, and this one's kind of obvious, but again, this kind of similar vein to the checking the power. Just ensure that your phone or your device that you're using PCS field data collector on has Bluetooth enabled on it. You also just want to make sure that if it is a controlled device by your organization, that there is no restrictions on that Bluetooth and what it can connect to. Secondly, your DVM should not be connected to your device through the Bluetooth settings. It really should actually be through the FDC application. So if you see over here on our screenshot, you can actually see the DVM as an option to connect. And this screenshot has already been connected, but you should be connecting to your DVM through the application itself and not your device. That's how our PCS field data collector application recognizes the device. So if for whatever reason you've connected to it, but still not connecting to it within PCS FDC, I would forget the device from your device and then try to repair it again through the application itself. Secondly, you want to make sure that your DVM is adequately charged. If it's pulsing, it means that it's in the low power mode. While it should still be functioning without issues on low power mode, depending on how low that battery is, it might be subject to communication issues. Again, similar to just your phone also running in low power mode. The performance can kind of dip there. So really to rule out any factors like that, we want to make sure that it's adequately charged at all times. To charge your device, you want to connect it to USB-C. When the power light is solid, that doesn't mean it's fully charged. When it's blinking, it is still charging. We do highly recommend a wall charger as well. You can charge it from like your Mesa device or your own device, but it does do it in a slower fashion. So the recommended charging method is through a USB-C wall charger. Any questions on either one of those best practices or just DVM connection issues?
Yeah, how long do you need to charge it for it to be fully charged?
That's a good question, actually, that I don't know off the top of my head, but I think someone in chat might be able to answer that. I think part of it is subject to the rate at which your charger can output, but off the top of my head, I can't recall, to be honest, Sarah. Lon, I think you're in chat and I saw you respond. I don't know if you happen to have an estimate.
Oh,
Fully dead could take 6 hours. Okay, good to know.
does it really matter, like the quality of your charger cable? I mean, I know, with my own devices, some chargers are frankly quite better than others. Do you recommend anything in particular?
I don't have a specific recommendation, but I will say that your quality of your charger does absolutely matter. I would recommend the one that comes with EVM itself, or anything that, and take this one with a grain of salt, but anything that costs more than $10 probably if you bought a charger, because you can buy those Dollar Tree chargers, and I probably would not recommend connecting anything to those, but let alone a DVM, which is it can be a pretty pricey loss if you end up having some sort of malfunction due to the charger itself. Okay. Any questions? Yeah, Mike, that's a good one. I don't have too much information on connecting the geode, but I mean, I'd be more than happy to get with you to get that info, um, and see if we can package it up for you and your users. Okay, moving on. Our next common inquiry is the unable to import your survey into PCS. Some of the symptoms that we'll see is you might be getting an error message upon trying to do an import, or your data is just not present. Here's some examples of some error messages. These are not the end all be all error messages, because the error messages are dependent on your specific data, and everyone has their own unique data sets. So your message might be unique to your data set and really what you're trying to import. Best practice one is validate your survey data against PCS. And really what I mean by that is ensure that any unique IDs that are within that survey are not already present in PCS. A unique ID is exactly what it sounds like. It's unique. It should not already be present in PCS unless it is to tie something down back to your data. Duplicate IDs can actually cause issues where PCS will then ask itself, I have no idea what is valid, and now I'm kind of conflicting as to what I should be bringing in, which then will spit out an error message. And that error message will give you a general understanding of what a unique ID or what data is causing that issue. But it can be a little troublesome and a little difficult to troubleshoot both from our side and the customer side, just because it does require a pretty deep understanding of your data as a whole to know, what could be causing it. On a similar vein, new and modified user-defined fields on PCS can cause the issue. And let me elaborate on that. So the example that I like to give when I say this point is, if me, a PCS administrator in the office, have made changes to some of the fields within our database, but there are surveys out on the field that have rules based off of an old version of our database, and we try to import that data, it could be subject to issues because I've now made conflicting changes within the database to what those original ones had upon surveying. So we'll often run into situations, and in fact, it's probably one of our most common scenarios for PCS, is that a change was made to the logic within PCS without it being vetted against what's out on the field, thus causing, again, this mismatch of validation against what's out there and what's present. So the best practice on that, and I do mention it again later here in our presentation, but really you want to just make sure that you're understanding what you're doing with your data here and how it could impact the field folks. If you know that you want to make a change to, again, some of your user-defined fields or some of the logic within PCS, ensure that nothing out, getting surveyed at the moment is going to have conflicts with that, and vice versa. Because you will absolutely run into a situation where you just can't bring that data in because now you've caused a conflict like that. In those situations, say you have made that change already, we would advise that either you roll back that change, at least temporarily, so that you can bring your data in and then implement it, or that you deploy a survey that has essentially the the new logic built into it from PCS. So it's another one of those where you do need to understand your data in and out. And we can help you with that, but it can be pretty tricky, especially if the person calling in does not understand the data thoroughly. So on a similar vein, changes to hierarchy, again, changes to PCS in general. If you made changes to your hierarchy selections and where that data should be present, well, that survey out in the field thinks that, oh, upon importing, I'm gonna import it to this section of PCS. Well, if that section no longer exists, you might not be able to import that now because you're essentially telling it to import somewhere that is no longer valid. So, right. Best practice two. Check your Survey Manager integration token. If you use Survey Manager, just make sure that your integration token within PCS itself is within the integration field, and that field is in Tools, Options, Integration. But sometimes, a user that has access to go into that options folder may delete it by accident. It's not uncommon. In fact, I bring it up in this conversation because it's happened more than a few times. So just spot check that, make sure that it's there for you. And then best practice three, make sure your job service is running. So job services is what is required to really get those imports in. And if it's in a not running state, it obviously won't be able to process those import jobs or export jobs actually. You want to just make sure that the device that's running job services is powered on and it has the appropriate permissions to your network. If for whatever reason everything looks clear and we still don't understand what's going on, permissions have been checked, network is good, device is on. Obviously we're here to help you guys out with those and we can troubleshoot alongside with you. But for the most part, most of the time,
really what I'll just kind of jump into is best practices. And I know this is not in a presenting state, but what I just wanted to cover is just, guys, always check for product updates, software, firmware. We're making updates for improvements, not just new features. And we want to make sure that you guys are staying on top of those. Communicate with your survey team, like I said, especially some of those PCS related items. Your field technicians should be informed as to what's going on regarding their data and what they need to collect. So a lot of pitfalls can be avoided with just a higher level of communication. That, I feel like that just happens for everyone across any organization. Understand changes to PCS prior to making them. Again, a thorough understanding of your data, it goes a long way in avoiding a lot of headache. And then lastly, stay sharp. We have a lot of good training material that should be reviewed, and really we encourage reviewing at a regular cadence, especially right before survey season. So if you need any help accessing that or want more information, we could definitely go ahead and provide that out to everyone. But ultimately, do right by your folks and ensure that they're prepared for the stuff that they're going to encounter out in the field. So. And that's it. I know we're at time, but and I apologize for the hiccup there, but thanks for being patient with me, everyone.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thank you.